How has your view on payment middlemen, I guess, evolved over time? You talked a bit about, working in fintech and then having this experience. Your banks were being shut down, your bank accounts in Canada. Um, how have you? How is your view on the role that banks and intermediaries play? Um, how has that evolved over time?
It's become more of a. I think it's funny if the younger you are, and then when you get into kind of becoming, I guess, kind of an adult and independent, you rely on the banking services, right? Because that's all you really know, right? That's what they teach you in the systems. It's like, hey, go to the banks. In Canada, it's kind of like a 401k. They say go to the banks, take out loans, but if you take out loans, make sure you save, put it into your RRSP, which is kind of like a 401k. And just trust the banks and do what they tell you to do, right? Even for transfers, payments, whatever it is. Um, that was kind of like the I guess the foundation kind of when we went through, me going through high school, college, and then after kind of obviously into the workforce, and then kind of now kind of what's happened with how banks can easily just kind of throw you aside because if you make a bad decision on kind of what you want to do with your assets or with your money, if they don't see it's fit, they kind of just close you down. And in the agreements in the banks that people don't see is that they have a right to. They're a private entity, they're a private business, and they can cut you at any time. And so that's kind of really skewed my views on just banks and intermediaries at all for everything. So when we do a lot of the transfers here for Vietnam overall across the world, so our biggest competitor right now is not local payment methods, like not like neobanks or anything like that. The biggest competitor right now is wires and Swift. Swift being a very large entity that's not going to like what we do here, although we don't have like the volume they do. But I think that's going to come down uh, quite soon. And so I think just those entities, whoever if you know what a wire, it just goes through a bunch of entities and no one knows what it is, right? And the bank always says, trust us when we send it to you. If I'm going to send a wire from US to Vietnam or from Vietnam to US, they'll tell you, don't worry, it's going to be there in about 5 to 7 days. Can I trace it? No. You just have to trust us and know that's going to come back. And if there's any issue, you can come back to us in 5 to 7 days, and we'll figure out if it's been settled, or if it's not been settled, then we'll have to figure out where it is. But they don't tell you who those intermediaries are, right? They don't tell you who the middlemen in the between are, who's getting a cut. And so that's really skewed my view on the whole kind of system itself, right? Like, if I'm going to send you money, Kevin, from like Vietnam, I should be able just to send that to you directly. I shouldn't have to wait 5 days to go to a bank, sign up everything, give all this information just to make sure that you get that fund, right? Like maybe it's $1,000 or something like that for a service I'm doing. I think it should be a lot simpler than that, right? And the reason why is because we live in a technology world that everything's instant, right? And banking is our last kind of segment piece to move that into our, I guess you would call it the digital age, right? Where everything's pretty quick, everything's fast, everything's open. You can go on the internet, you can search everything, right? And Bitcoin does that, right? Like if I wanted to send you something, and many people know this, is that you just go check it in Explorer, you put an address in, and you can see that I've sent you money at this time and date, literally instantly, right? And obviously there's some confirmations in between. You wait 10 minutes and then you get a confirmation. Whereas at banks, there is no confirmation there. So that's really skewed my thesis on kind of all the legacy, I would say, fintech companies. Even though I worked at fintech companies, the biggest thing that I've seen a very big difference is working at a fintech company is very stressful because of all the layers and infrastructure that you need to go build within that company, right? Because you still rely on legacy rails. So all the partners, the databases, everything. Whereas if you have a Bitcoin company, I think a lot of people understand that when you have a Bitcoin company, this is just my opinion, is that 60 to 70% of that infrastructure is gone, meaning that our primary database is a source of truth that's out in the world. Like everyone can check this global ledger, and no one's going to mess with it. No one's going to skew with it. No one can take back transactions. No one can manipulate transactions. No one can take anything back, which is the beautiful part. We just go and say, here's the transactions that I ever sent. I can pull a whole record of everything that's been through, and I can shift that as a report, right? Whereas fintech, it's if something goes wrong and there's a database corruption, then everything's all screwed. Then you have to shut everything down. You got to make sure that the transactions are in order, everything's in place, and then you got to kind of reboot it in a way and make sure the transactions start flowing again. And so that causes a huge problem, right? So having a Bitcoin business opposed to a fintech business relieves, I would say, 60-70% of that overhead that usually isn't needed in a fintech. And so kind
Right.
of, yeah, so that kind of itself is a benefit, but also just kind of the transparency that Bitcoin brings as well. Whereas fintech is all really private, and all those ledgers and everything you get, also with the partnerships with the banks, don't really provide you the information you want. So